The prison hallway smelled like bleach and bad memories. Officer Callum Raines walked slow, almost unwilling, his boots echoing against concrete. Ahead, cell 214 buzzed with a restless silence, the kind that made your skin itch. Inside sat Garrett Lane, former firefighter, convicted felon, and 3 days from death row. He hadn't asked for much. Didn't flinch during sentencing. Didn't cry when his mother died last winter. But this morning he sent a request. Before they take me, let me sit with Kilo again. The air in Warden Kessler's office was always stale, like unspoken regrets sealed in drywall. The morning sun filtered through dusty blinds, casting long gray bars across Garrett Lane's file, splayed open on the desk. Officer Callum Raines stood rigid in front of it, thumbs hooked in his duty belt, his K9, Kilo, a 7-year-old sable German shepherd, sitting calmly at his side. Kessler pinched the bridge of his nose. He wants 10 minutes. With the dog. Supervised. Callum blinked slowly. Why now? Don't ask me. Inmates' rights, technically. He was Kilo's handler before the trial, and no one fought to sever the bond. Callum looked down at Kilo, who tilted his head. The dog's ears twitched like he remembered the name. You've read the files, Kessler said. If you're saying no, say it now. Callum didn't. He was too busy staring at the black and white photograph clipped to the case summary. Garrett in uniform, arm draped around Kilo, both of them caked in soot after pulling 2 kids from a burning trailer, smiling like heroes, back when the world still made sense. 10 minutes, Callum said. No cuffs off. No sudden moves. Kessler gave a dry nod. Room 3A. We'll keep eyes on you. Room 3A was a concrete cube. 2 metal chairs, a steel table bolted to the floor, one wide mirror hiding a camera. Kilo's claws clicked against the linoleum as he patted in first, pausing to sniff the stale air. Garrett was already seated. Clean jumpsuit, shackled wrists. The fire in his eyes had dimmed since the trial, but something in his posture still burned. Kilo froze. For a full beat, the shepherd didn't move. Then his tail twitched. Garrett didn't speak. He just looked at the dog like someone might look at the last good memory they had left. Kilo, Callum murmured, releasing the leash. Steady. The shepherd approached slowly, nose twitching. He sniffed Garrett's boots, then his knee. The moment stretched long, taut as wire. Then Kilo leaned in and rested his massive head on Garrett's lap. Callum swallowed. Garrett's fingers trembled as he stroked the dog's ears. No one said anything. The room, the mirror, even the security feed, all of it fell completely silent. Garrett finally spoke. You still running the drills? He asked quietly, not looking up. Callum stayed by the door. He passed certification last month. He's solid. He always was. Garrett's voice cracked around the edges. Tell me the truth. Does he flinch in the tunnels? No, Callum replied, but he hesitates at water. Garrett exhaled hard, like the answer hit deeper than it should have. That's my fault. That pond collapsed last spring. He went under before I could reach him. Callum didn't respond. That wasn't in the file. Silence settled again, but not the peaceful kind. It pulsed like a second heartbeat beneath the room. I didn't do it, Garrett said finally. Callum folded his arms. You're on tape. 2 hours before the fire started, arguing with your captain. Garrett laughed bitterly. You think motive equals guilt? Callum shifted his weight, but didn't answer. She was going to expose the faulty wiring. Department was cutting corners on inspections. They wanted it quiet. She didn't want quiet. Callum's eyes narrowed. You're saying the department torched its own station? Garrett met his gaze. I'm saying someone wanted her dead. Kilo whined softly, pressing closer to Garrett. Callum stepped forward. You've had your time, unless you got evidence. I did, Garrett said. A flash drive. I gave it to someone I trusted. But now I think they buried it. Or me. Who? Garrett didn't answer. Instead, he looked down at Kilo, voice low. He was there that night. He tried to drag me out after the second explosion. He saw what they left behind. Callum frowned. Saw who? Still nothing. A knock at the door interrupted the tension. Kessler's voice through the intercom. "Time's up." Garrett stood slowly. "He'll remember," he said, nodding to the dog. Kilo gave a soft bark. Callum clipped the leash back on. As they turned to leave, Garrett called out just once, "Rains!" Callum paused. "If they kill me, don't bury me with a flag. I already died in that fire." Outside the room, the hallway felt colder. Kilo walked slower than usual, glancing back at the door like he'd left something behind. Callum didn't speak, but something itched at the base of his skull. That flash drive, that unfinished sentence. "I gave it to someone I trusted." He made a call that night to Lena Voss, the arson investigator who testified during the trial. She didn't answer. Next morning, her house burned to the ground. No one was inside, but in the ash and rubble, they found a safe with a scorched lock and a melted USB port. The fire didn't look accidental. Callum stood in the soaked remains of Lena Voss's ranch house, breathing through the sting of chemical smoke still lingering in the walls. Char patterns licked the hallways in unnatural waves. Accelerant, maybe. Too clean. Too focused. The fire chief on site said the same thing Callum already knew. Started in the basement. Fast, hot, concentrated. Like someone knew exactly where they were going. Callum crouched near what was left of a reinforced gun safe. Its door pried and warped like taffy under extreme heat. Inside, nothing. Not even ash. "Where's Voss?" he asked. "Gone," said the chief. "Neighbors saw her pack a bag yesterday morning. She told one of them she was going to visit her sister in Oregon, but there's no record of her boarding a flight." Callum didn't believe in coincidence. Not anymore. Back at the precinct, Kilo paced restlessly by the lockers, nails clicking on tile. He wasn't usually like this. Not twitchy, not uncertain. But something in him had changed since yesterday's visit. Callum tapped his pen against the edge of his desk. The official report on Garrett's case sat next to a folder labeled Station Fire. Internal Review. Close. He opened it. Page after page of box signatures. Assumptions written as facts. A timeline that never quite matched. Garrett's captain, Melinda Hart, had filed 3 complaints about faulty circuit inspections, all marked non-urgent. She died in the second blast. Garrett had supposedly been inside at the time, caught on security footage fleeing the back exit, limping, face blackened with soot. But there was a 32-minute gap between the detonation and his arrest. And no one ever found the original security tapes. Just copies. Callum flipped to the last page. A signature. Lena Voss. He drove to her house again after sunset. The place was cordoned off, ash still wet from the rain. Kilo hopped from the truck before the engine even cut, ears perked. Callum followed him into the remains of the hallway. The dog paused at the scorched safe, sniffed, then turned left toward a half-collapsed staircase. He barked once. Then again. Callum knelt. "What is it, boy?" Kilo nosed at a vent beneath the stairs. Callum yanked it free. Inside, wrapped in a melted Ziploc bag, sat a heat-warped metal object. Small. Flat. A backup drive. The plastic edges fused, but the core, metal resilient, might still hold something. He didn't bring it to the station. Not yet. Instead, he drove out to Oak Hollow, an old hunting cabin once used by search and rescue teams before funding cutbacks. It hadn't been logged in years. Just trees, silence, and a generator-powered laptop. He kept for quiet moments like this. The drive clicked, hissed, then finally loaded. 4 folders. All time-stamped 6 months before the fire. Callum clicked the first. Surveillance footage. Raw. Silent with timestamps. One showed 2 men in firefighter uniforms pouring something from red gas cans inside the empty station. One of them looked straight into the camera. Captain Theo Mercer. Still active. Promoted shortly after the fire. Another folder. Inspection files. Backdated reports showing electrical failures. Signed off by someone who never existed, J. Anders. The third folder held audio files. He clicked the largest. Garrett's voice, low and panicked. "Melinda, you need to go to the press. I'll back you. I've got the reports, the photos. If they find out we've got them. A woman. They already know, Garrett. Someone's watching my house. They slashed my tires this morning. Then static. The final folder held only one file. A video, 20 seconds long. Someone had filmed through a window. Garrett pacing in his kitchen. A shadow behind him. Then, the screen went black. Callum sat there, heart pounding, back at his cruiser. He stared into the woods, phone buzzing in his lap. Unknown number. He answered. "You shouldn't have opened it," said a man's voice. Calm, measured. "Now you're part of it." Callum's throat went dry. Who is this? Click. He didn't go home that night. Instead, he drove to the edge of the prison grounds, parked, and let Kilo out into the moonlight. The dog sat at the fence, staring through the razor wire. Cell block he blinked faintly in the distance. Callum crouched beside him, murmuring under his breath. "You knew," he said. "Didn't you?" Kilo's ears twitched. He gave a low, almost mournful sound. Inside the prison, Garrett Lane slept for the first time in 3 nights. But when the guards came for him in the morning, they found a note, 6 words, scratched into the paint above his bed. He's not the only one watching. Callum took the flash drive to the State Bureau next. Not his station. Not this town. He handed it off anonymously, under the name J. Anders. And he didn't wait for thanks. He knew too well what came next. But by the time Internal Affairs launched their quiet investigation into Captain Mercer, he was already gone, discharged, missing, and Lena Voss still off-grid. 3 weeks passed before Callum got another call. This one came from a disposable number. A woman's voice. "You got out," she said. "He bought us time." "Who are you?" Callum asked. "I'm the one Garrett gave the original drive to. I tried to burn it, but I kept a copy." "Why?" "Because I didn't trust myself." "Why tell me now?" A pause. Then, "Because they're still out there, and now you're on their list too." Click. That night, someone broke into Callum's apartment. They didn't take anything, just left a Polaroid on the kitchen table. Kilo, in the backyard, sleeping, a red X over his chest. Callum packed 2 duffel bags before sunrise. Weapons, gear, and food for the dog. They didn't wait. They drove, into the kind of back roads no GPS bothered mapping. But Kilo sat alert in the passenger seat, like he knew they weren't running. They were circling back. They drove through counties where the road signs were faded, and the diner coffee always tasted burnt. Callum used burner phones, paid in cash, and stayed in places with paper guest books instead of computer systems. But the feeling never left. Someone was still watching. Not just him. Kilo, too. They made it to the outskirts of Moss Creek by week's end. A quiet, fog-heavy town nestled between dying pines and a lake that hadn't thawed right in 4 winters. It was the kind of place people forgot about. Exactly the kind of place you'd pick if you wanted to disappear. But Callum didn't come here to vanish. He came to finish what Garrett Lane couldn't. The first stop was the old station house on 4th and Lyle, long abandoned after the fire. Rust flaked from the badge, insignia above the garage doors. A handmade memorial still sat on the curb, half-rotted flowers in milk jugs, a scorched photo of Captain Melinda Hart stapled to a fence post. Kilo jumped from the truck, ears immediately up. Something had his attention. He walked slow toward the side of the building, then stopped, nose to concrete. Scraped paint, faint boot prints in the dirt. Callum crouched and ran a finger through disturbed soil. Someone else had been here. Recently. Inside, the station was a skeleton of its former self. Ash-streaked walls. Melted wiring. A broken clock stuck at 2:17 a.m., the exact time of the first explosion. Callum kept Kilo close as they moved deeper, the flashlight beam cutting through dust and silence. In the captain's old office, he found the rusted hinge of a trapdoor near the back wall. It groaned open. Below, concrete steps led to the service corridor. Kilo didn't hesitate. They descended into the dark. The hallway was narrow, barely lit by a flickering emergency bulb. Somewhere down there, water dripped steadily, echoing like a heartbeat. Callum found the first piece of evidence halfway through the corridor. A burned clipboard, melted ID badge still clipped to the ring. Lena Voss. She'd been here. The silence grew heavier with every step. Then Kilo stopped. Low growl, deep in his chest. Callum raised his weapon. They turned the corner and found the door, unmarked, reinforced, still locked. Callum stepped forward, tried the handle. It opened. Inside was a surveillance room. Dust-covered monitors, shelves of labeled tapes. Someone had tried to destroy the place, but in a rush, some footage remained. Callum fed one of the tapes into the machine. Static, then video. A younger Garrett Lane, sitting at that very desk. Voice low, haunted. If you're watching this, I didn't kill Melinda, but I know who did. A name was about to follow. Then, gunshot. Callum flinched. Not from the tape. From real life. Above, he bolted for the stairwell. Kilo was already bounding ahead. Up the hall, past the captain's office. A second shot cracked through the open roof. They reached the surface just as a figure in dark fatigue sprinted toward a waiting SUV. Callum raised a sidearm. Fired. Missed. The SUV tore off down the street. But Kilo, pure instinct, was already chasing. Kilo, no! Callum shouted, running after. The shepherd disappeared behind the warehouse strip. Then, a yelp. High. Painful. Too sharp to ignore. Callum turned the corner, chest burning, breath tight. Kilo lay in the gravel, one leg twisted unnaturally, bleeding from a graze near the ribs. The SUV was gone. Stay with me, boy, Callum said, kneeling fast. Don't you quit on me. Kilo whimpered, pressing his snout into Callum's hand. His eyes never left his handler's face. Sirens wailed in the distance. Too far, too slow. They patched Kilo up at a rural vet in a converted barn. No questions asked. The vet, an older woman with crow's feet and sharp eyes, worked quietly, then said only one thing before leaving the room. You're not the first man to come here with a bleeding dog and secrets in his eyes. But be careful. Moss Creek's the kind of place that remembers things. 2 days later, the tape made it to the state commission, unedited, untraceable. Within a week, an arrest warrant was issued for Captain Theo Mercer, now operating under an alias in Utah. A deeper probe into the fire station budget revealed a 10-year embezzlement scheme tied to falsified inspections, political bribes, and 5 suspicious deaths. Garrett Lane's conviction was overturned posthumously, but he never got to see it. The execution chamber had been sealed off for renovations that winter, a delay no one had questioned. Garrett's cell was now empty, his name etched into a plaque outside the prison's chapel. He died in the fire. The rest just took longer. On the first day of spring, Callum stood alone by the creek outside Moss Ridge. Kilo limped beside him, scars still fresh beneath his fur, but healing. Callum held a collar in his hands. Old, worn, the tag still red. Kilo handler, Garrett Lane. He buried it beneath a maple tree. No ceremony, no words, just silence. The kind that sits heavy in your chest. The kind that means something's finished and something else has begun. Weeks later, a letter arrived in Callum's P.O. box. No return address. Inside, a photo. Lena Voss, sitting on a beach somewhere, holding a young girl on her lap. On the back, he saved us both. That night, Callum sat on the porch of the old cabin. Kilo lay beside him, tail thumping lightly, head on Callum's boot. The stars were out. Quiet, clear. For the first time in months, there were no shadows moving beyond the tree line.